Night. The kind of night that feels almost unreal. Black limousines glide slowly through the iron gates of a centuries-old castle, their headlights cutting through the golden mist of hundreds of flashing cameras. The air vibrates with excitement. Photographers shout names. Security guards whisper into radios. Outside the gate, fans press against the barriers, holding their phones high, hoping to capture a glimpse of what many are already calling the most extravagant wedding of the decade. A red carpet, long and impossibly bright, stretches from the castle entrance all the way to the grand hall. Inside that hall, chandeliers worth more than most houses hang from a ceiling painted centuries ago. Crystal glasses sparkle on tables covered in silk. Thousands of white roses fill the room with a soft fragrance. Tonight is not just a wedding. It is a $1,000,000 spectacle. And the entire world is watching. Then, a black Rolls-Royce Phantom slowly stops at the entrance. The door opens. For a moment, the crowd falls strangely quiet. Because stepping out of that car is Amber Heard, the bride. Her dress seems to catch the light of every camera at once. Layers of shimmering silk cascade down the steps of the car, the long veil trailing behind her like a river of silver under the night sky. Some reporters whisper, some simply stare. Because this moment, this night, is something no one expected to see again. Not after everything. At the end of the red carpet, standing beneath an arch of white orchids and crystal lights, a man waits. Johnny Depp, 62 years old. The legendary actor who has lived through decades of fame, scandal, triumph, and silence. Tonight, however, the cameras capture something different. He is smiling. Not the mysterious smile fans know from his films. Not the ironic smile from countless red carpets. But something quieter, almost relieved. Because according to those closest to him, Johnny Depp believes that after all the chaos, after all the years of headlines and courtroom battles, after the long nights where the world seemed to be watching his life fall apart, he has finally found the one person he was meant to stand beside. Amber walks slowly along the red carpet. Every step is followed by the rapid burst of cameras. Inside the castle hall, guests begin to rise from their seats. Hollywood producers, European aristocrats, musicians, actors, directors, names that have shaped cinema for decades. Some of them whisper as the bride enters, not because they are surprised by the luxury. The luxury was expected. What surprises them is something else. The scale of this night. Sources close to the wedding planners reveal that the celebration has taken nearly 18 months to prepare. Private jets flew guests from Los Angeles, Paris, London, and Rome. A famous Italian chef designed a menu rumored to cost over $2 million. The orchestra playing tonight includes musicians from the Vienna Philharmonic. Even the fireworks scheduled for midnight were reportedly designed by the same company that creates displays for royal celebrations. But none of that is what truly fascinates the crowd. What fascinates them is the story behind the man waiting at the end of the carpet, Johnny Depp. For decades, he has been one of the most enigmatic figures in Hollywood. A pirate, a poet, a rebel, a man who seemed to exist somewhere between myth and reality. And yet, tonight, standing beneath thousands of lights, he looks less like a legend and more like a man who has been waiting a very long time for this moment. Amber takes another step, then another. The veil moves gently behind her as the orchestra begins to play a slow arrangement of strings. From the balcony above, cameras broadcast the scene live to millions of viewers around the world. Social media explodes. Commentators describe the scene as the wedding that Hollywood never saw coming. Because just a few years ago, no one imagined this moment could exist. No one imagined Johnny Depp would stand in a place like this again, surrounded by so much light. But life, as it turns out, has strange ways of rewriting its own script. Amber reaches the halfway point of the carpet. The guests watch silently. Johnny does not move. He simply waits. And those close enough to see his face notice something unusual. His hands tremble slightly. Not from fear, not from nerves, but from something that looks almost like disbelief, as if even he cannot fully believe that this night is real. The orchestra grows louder. The chandeliers shimmer. Outside the castle walls, fireworks technicians prepare the first sequence that will soon light up the entire sky above the estate. But inside the hall, everything feels strangely quiet. Amber continues walking toward him. The distance between them grows smaller, and somewhere in the crowd, someone whispers a question that no journalist has yet been able to answer. How did this night happen? How did the man who once seemed surrounded by endless storms arrive at a moment like this, standing beneath a ceiling of crystal lights, waiting for the woman he now calls the love of his life? The cameras keep flashing. The orchestra continues to play, and Amber Heard keeps walking slowly toward the man at the end of the red carpet. The castle itself seems to glow under the night sky. It stands on the edge of a private island, surrounded by dark water that reflects thousands of golden lights placed along the stone walls. For weeks, boats have been arriving quietly, delivering flowers, glass sculptures, and rare wines from across Europe. Tonight, the entire island belongs to one event: the wedding of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Guests who arrived earlier in the afternoon already sensed that this night would be unlike anything they had seen before. Private helicopters circled above the island one after another, landing on a specially built helipad just beyond the garden. Black cars waited to escort each guest through a road lined with lanterns and white roses. Among the arriving guests were names that rarely appear in the same room: Hollywood legends, technology billionaires, fashion icons, directors whose films have shaped generations. Some came from Los Angeles. Others flew in from Dubai, Paris, London, and Tokyo. A few of them whispered the same sentence while stepping into the castle hall. This feels less like a wedding, and more like a royal coronation. Inside, the atmosphere grows heavier with excitement as Amber walks closer toward Johnny. The orchestra slowly shifts into a deeper melody. Rows of candles illuminate the aisle, each flame flickering gently, as if reacting to the movement of hundreds of people breathing in the same moment. The bride's gown becomes clearer under the lights. It is not simply a wedding dress. It is a masterpiece. Designed by one of Europe's most exclusive fashion houses, the dress reportedly took more than 8 months to create. Thousands of hand-stitched crystals are embedded into the fabric, catching the chandelier light and scattering it across the room. Some guests later say the dress alone is rumored to cost over $500,000. But even that is only one detail in a night overflowing with spectacle. Outside the castle walls, technicians begin preparing the first fireworks display. It has been choreographed to music and will explode above the island in waves of color later tonight. Near the gardens, a collection of luxury vehicles waits for the couple's grand departure. A line of Ferraris, Bentleys, and vintage Rolls-Royces gleam beneath soft lighting, guarded by security teams dressed in black suits. Further down the shore, a sleek white superyacht floats quietly in the harbor, reserved for the couple's private celebration after the ceremony. And above the island, 3 helicopters remain on standby, their blades still, their silhouettes barely visible against the stars. Inside the hall, however, the focus remains on the aisle. Amber finally reaches the final steps. Johnny looks at her. For a brief second, the noise of the room fades. The cameras, the whispers, the orchestra. Everything seems distant. Then the crowd begins to react. Some guests smile openly. Others lift their phones, unable to resist capturing the moment. A famous director sitting in the front row leans toward a friend and quietly murmurs, "This will be remembered." Behind them, the sound of glasses gently clinking echoes across the hall. Servers move silently between tables, carrying trays of champagne worth thousands of dollars per bottle. But the luxury does not end there. In a private chamber just behind the ballroom, musicians prepare for the next stage of the night. Rumors spread among the guests earlier that evening. A legendary rock band is scheduled to perform. Not a tribute band, not a hired orchestra. The real thing. And later, Two internationally famous singers are expected to take the stage for a surprise duet prepared specifically for the couple. As the ceremony continues, the lights inside the hall slowly dim. Soft golden beams focus on the center aisle, transforming the ancient castle into something that feels almost cinematic. Outside the tall windows, the ocean reflects the moonlight. Inside, the music grows stronger. Amber and Johnny stand facing each other now. Around them, the crowd begins to feel the strange electricity that only certain nights seem to hold. The kind of night people will talk about years later, because everything here feels larger than life. The castle, the lights, the music echoing across the marble floor, and the sense that this wedding is no longer just a private moment between two people. It has become something else entirely. A spectacle, a legend in the making. Across the hall, the first notes of a famous song begin to rise as the surprise performers step toward the stage. The crowd turns, the lights shift again, and somewhere far above the island, fireworks technicians receive the signal that the next part of the night is about to begin. The music slows, not suddenly, almost imperceptibly. One violin fades into silence, then another. The orchestra softens until only a single piano note lingers in the vast hall. The guests sense something changing. Amber and Johnny are now standing beneath the arch of white orchids. The priest has finished speaking the traditional words. The candles along the aisle burn quietly. Outside the tall windows, the ocean moves in slow, dark waves. For a few seconds, the room feels suspended between breaths. Johnny Depp looks at Amber. Not the way actors look at their co-stars on a red carpet. Not the way celebrities perform affection in front of cameras. This is different. Closer. More private. And yet it is happening in front of hundreds of people. He reaches slowly into the inside pocket of his black suit. Some guests lean forward slightly, because this movement was not part of the rehearsal earlier that afternoon. The wedding planner standing near the stage notices it too. She frowns. Amber tilts her head, slightly curious. Johnny takes out something small. Not a ring. Everyone expected the ring. Instead, it is a folded piece of paper. Old. Slightly worn. The cameras zoom closer. The photographers stop shouting. The hall becomes strangely quiet. Johnny holds the paper between his fingers for a moment, as if deciding whether to open it. Amber looks at him with a faint smile that slowly begins to fade into confusion. Someone in the crowd whispers, "What is that?" Johnny finally unfolds the paper. The microphone near the altar captures the faint rustling sound. He glances down at the page, then back at Amber, and for the first time that night, his voice breaks the silence. "Do you remember this?" Amber's eyes narrow slightly. She steps closer. Johnny holds the paper out toward her. The guests cannot see what is written. Only Amber can. Her expression changes almost instantly. Not dramatically, but enough. Her shoulders freeze. Her lips part slightly. The room feels the shift immediately. Some guests exchange quick looks. The orchestra members lower their instruments, because whatever is happening now was not planned. Amber takes the paper from Johnny's hand. She reads it slowly. Once, then again. A long moment passes. The hall remains silent except for the faint sound of wind brushing against the castle windows. Someone near the back of the room whispers again, "What is written on it?" No one answers. Amber lifts her eyes toward Johnny. For a second, it almost looks like she might laugh, but she doesn't. Instead, she takes a step closer to him. So close now that their voices drop lower than the microphones can clearly capture. Only fragments of their words drift through the speakers. "After all these years? You kept it. I thought it was gone." Johnny nods once. He takes the paper back, holds it between them, and then he says something that sends a ripple of confusion through the audience. This was the first promise. The guests shift in their seats. A few of them lean toward each other. First promise? Some reporters quickly type messages on their phones, because no one in the press has ever heard of such a thing. Johnny turns the paper outward slightly, but still not enough for the cameras to read it. Only a glimpse appears on the giant screens above the stage. A few lines, handwritten, old ink. Amber watches him carefully. Her eyes no longer carry the playful brightness from earlier in the evening. Now they look deeper, more serious. Johnny continues speaking, slowly, almost as if he is choosing every word with caution. "There was a night," he says softly, "when neither of us thought the world would ever see this." The guests remain perfectly still. No clinking glasses, no whispering. Even the servers moving between tables have stopped. Amber's fingers tighten slightly around the edge of her dress. Johnny folds the paper again, but instead of putting it away, he places it gently on the small table beside the wedding rings. Then he looks at Amber again. A long pause, the kind that stretches just enough to make people uncomfortable. Then Amber says something, quietly, but clearly enough for the microphone to catch. "You were never supposed to keep that." A few people in the crowd exchange puzzled looks. Johnny smiles faintly, not amused, more like someone remembering something far away. "Maybe," he says. But some promises don't disappear. Amber stares at him for a few seconds longer. The silence grows heavier. Somewhere outside the castle, the first distant sound of fireworks technicians preparing the next sequence echoes faintly. Inside the hall, however, the air feels thick with questions. What was written on that paper? What promise? And why does the bride look suddenly as if she has stepped into a memory no one else in the room understands? Johnny reaches for the rings again. But before the ceremony can continue, Amber gently places her hand on his arm, stopping him. The orchestra members glance at one another. The priest looks uncertain. The guests hold their breath. Amber leans slightly closer to Johnny and whispers something that the microphones fail to capture. Johnny's expression changes. Not shock, something more complicated. Something that makes the entire hall feel as though it is standing on the edge of a moment no one had prepared for. And somewhere in the crowd, a camera zooms in again on the folded piece of paper lying quietly beside the wedding rings. Night deepens. The ceremony inside the castle ends without anyone quite realizing when it happened. One moment, the hall was silent, suspended in that strange tension after the whisper between Johnny and Amber. The next moment, music begins again, slow, elegant. A string orchestra fills the grand hall with a melody that rises gently beneath the crystal chandeliers. Guests begin to breathe again. Champagne glasses are lifted. Soft conversations return. But something in the atmosphere has changed. Not dramatically, just enough. Johnny and Amber move through the crowd together, greeting guests one by one. Famous faces step forward. Actors, directors, billionaires whose names rarely appear in photographs. Hands are shaken. Quiet congratulations are exchanged. Some guests laugh. Others simply watch. Because even in the middle of this overwhelming luxury, people keep glancing toward the small table where the rings had rested earlier. The folded paper is gone. No one knows when Johnny picked it up. Outside the tall castle doors, the garden has transformed. Thousands of lanterns now float above the lawn like tiny stars. Waiters glide between marble fountains carrying silver trays of champagne and rare wine. Music drifts across the gardens where guests begin to gather beneath the open sky. Then, the first firework explodes. A deep thunder rolls across the island. Above the castle, the sky bursts open in gold. Another explosion follows. Blue, then red. The fireworks rise higher, blooming across the night like enormous flowers made of light. Guests step onto the terraces. Phones rise into the air. Someone cheers. The music shifts again, louder now, the rhythm carried by drums somewhere near the gardens where a live band has begun playing. Near the marble staircase leading to the upper balconies, Johnny and Amber slowly disappear from the crowd. No announcement, no dramatic exit. They simply walk upward together while the fireworks continue above the island. Some guests notice. Most do not. The night has grown too dazzling. On the upper level of the castle, the wind is stronger. Amber's veil lifts slightly behind her as they step onto a narrow balcony overlooking the gardens. From here, the entire celebration can be seen. Hundreds of guests, lanterns floating above the lawn. The stage where musicians now perform beneath bright lights. Beyond the gardens, the ocean stretches into darkness. Another wave of fireworks explodes above the water. Gold sparks fall slowly through the sky like burning snow. Johnny leans against the balcony railing. Amber stands beside him. For a moment, neither of them speaks. Below them, the crowd erupts into applause as a famous singer steps onto the stage. The band begins playing louder. Some guests start dancing. From the harbor, the white superyacht glows under rows of lights. A helicopter passes slowly in the distance, its red signal blinking against the stars. Amber rests one hand on the stone railing. The wind catches the edge of her dress, lifting the white fabric slightly into the air. Johnny glances at her. She looks out toward the fireworks. Another explosion lights the sky, this one brighter than the others, silver and gold expanding across the darkness. The light reflects in the castle windows, in the ocean, in the glass towers of champagne held by guests below. On the balcony, Johnny reaches into his pocket again. For a moment, then his hand stops. He does not take anything out. Amber notices. She turns her head slightly. Johnny looks down toward the garden where the celebration continues. Music, laughter, light. The entire island glowing under the fireworks. Amber steps closer beside him. Not touching, just standing there. The wind moves gently through the balcony, carrying the distant sound of the orchestra. Below them, hundreds of guests still look up toward the sky. Above the castle, the fireworks continue to bloom. And on the high balcony overlooking the celebration, the bride and the groom remain standing side by side, while the white wedding dress moves softly in the night wind.